Dae-sung Kim stood at the large window of Morning Calm Station, watching Earth spin slowly below. His hand touched the cold glass as he thought about tomorrow's big event. After 15 years of hard work, the first group of regular people would visit his space station. "The final safety checks are done," said Jae-won Park, walking up behind him. Her footsteps made soft clicking sounds against the station's floor. She was the best engineer Dae-sung had ever worked with, and her new safety systems had made this dream possible. Dae-sung turned away from the window. "How does everything look?" "Perfect," Jae-won said with a small smile. She pulled up a tablet showing rows of green lights. "All systems are working just as they should. The living areas are ready, the air systems are running well, and the emergency systems are tested and working." Dae-sung remembered when this was all just a dream. Back then, he was just a pilot flying regular planes, looking up at the stars and wondering. Now, at age 35, he was in charge of humanity's first real space hotel. The station wasn't very big, just 6 rooms for guests, a main viewing area, and some workspaces, but it was comfortable and, most importantly, safe. Ji-won had spent 5 years making sure of that. "The news channels are going crazy," Jae-won said, showing him another screen. "Look at all these headlines. Space tourism finally here. Regular people to visit space. Morning Calm Station opens for visitors." Dae-sung watched the screens but didn't really see them. He was thinking about his father's words from long ago. Space is not for regular people. It's for trained astronauts and rich business people. "What's wrong?" Jae-won asked, seeing his serious face. "Are you worried about tomorrow?" "A little," he admitted. "We're about to prove that regular people can live in space safely. If we succeed, we change everything. If we fail..." Jae-won put her hand on his shoulder. "We won't fail. I've thought of everything that could go wrong. The Butterfly Protocol will keep everyone safe." The Butterfly Protocol was Ji-won's biggest achievement. It was a smart computer system that could spot problems before they happened and fix them automatically. It made space travel almost as safe as riding in an airplane. Their tablets beeped at the same time. A message appeared. "Tourists have completed final medical checks. All clear for tomorrow's launch." Dae-sung took a deep breath. "Have you seen their final list of questions? What are they most worried about?" Jae-won laughed softly. "Mostly small things. Young Lee wants to know if she can bring her knitting needles. Han Sol-choi is worried about internet connection for his business calls. Soo Bin Kang asks about makeup in zero gravity. And Tae Ho-yoon wants to know if he can do some science experiments." "Regular people with regular concerns," Dae-sung said, smiling. "That's exactly what we wanted." They watched as the sun came up over Earth's edge, making everything glow orange and red. In just 24 hours, 4 ordinary people would see this same view for the first time. "We should get some sleep," Jae-won said. "Tomorrow will be a big day." Dae-sung nodded but didn't move. "Just a few more minutes," he said quietly. "I want to remember this moment, the last quiet night before everything changes." The station hummed softly around them as they stood in comfortable silence. Below them, Earth kept spinning, and somewhere down there, 4 brave people were getting ready for the adventure of their lives. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow would show that space wasn't just for astronauts and billionaires anymore. Tomorrow would prove that his father was wrong. Space was for everyone. Dae-sung finally turned away from the window. "Okay," he said. "Let's get ready for tomorrow. Time to make history." The morning sun lit up the large meeting room at the Gohyung Space Center. 4 people sat around a polished table, each looking at their information packets. These were the chosen ones, the first regular tourists who would visit space. Young Lee adjusted her reading glasses as she studied the papers in front of her. At 65 years old, she was the oldest in the group. Her gray hair was tied back neatly, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. She had won her ticket in the national lottery, beating millions of other people who had entered. "I still can't believe this is real," Young Mai said, touching the Space Center's logo on her papers. My grandchildren think their grandmother is the coolest person in the world now. Across from her, Hansol Choi checked his expensive watch again. The business tycoon had paid a large amount of money to join the program. His face showed doubt as he read through the safety procedures. "These risk numbers seem high," Hansol said, frowning at the papers. "Are we sure the station is ready for visitors?" Even though his company had helped fund the project, he still wasn't completely sure about it. Su Bin Kang looked up from her phone where she was recording everything for her millions of followers. "The safety systems are amazing," she said. "I researched everything about the butterfly protocol. It's the most advanced space safety system ever made." At 28, Su Bin was famous for making videos about science and technology. Her posts about the space tourism program had already gotten more attention than anything else she had ever shared. The fourth person at the table was Tai Ho Yoon, a high school science teacher. He had been chosen through a national education program. His students had made him promise to do at least 10 science experiments in space. "The engineers have thought of everything," Tai Ho said, pointing to a diagram. "Look at these backup systems. They have backups for the backups." The door opened, and Dae-sung Kim walked in with Jae-won Park. Everyone sat up straighter as the program leaders entered the room. "Good morning," Dae-sung said with a warm smile. "Today we start your final training week. In 7 days, you'll be looking down at Earth from space. Are you ready?" Young-mi nodded right away. Hansol adjusted his tie nervously. Su Bin gave a thumbs up to her phone camera. Tae-ho grabbed his notebook, ready to write everything down. Jae-won stepped forward with her tablet. "Let's talk about what will happen on launch day," she said. "Everything is planned carefully to keep you safe and comfortable." As Jae-won explained the launch procedures, Young-mi took notes in careful handwriting. She had worked in a small shop all her life, and now she was going to space. It felt like a dream. Hansol kept asking questions about the safety systems. Each time Jae-won answered, she showed him test results and safety ratings. Slowly, his worried face began to relax. Su Bin recorded everything, adding her own excited comments. "My followers won't believe this," she said. "Regular people going to space. It's history happening right now." Tae-ho's notebook was filling up with diagrams and notes. "My students will love this," he said. "They'll be able to watch their teacher float in space." Dae-sung watched them all with satisfaction. This was exactly what the program needed. Regular people with different backgrounds, all ready to show that space wasn't just for trained astronauts anymore. "Remember," he said, "you're not just tourists. You're pioneers. You're going to show the world that space is for everyone." The room felt full of energy and hope. In 7 days, these 4 ordinary people would do something extraordinary. They would open the door for everyone who dreamed of touching the stars. The spinning chamber whirled around as Young-mi Lee floated inside. She kept her eyes fixed on one point, just as Jae-won had taught her. The special training machine helped people get ready for the feeling of being in space. "Perfect, Young-mi." Jae-won's voice came through the speakers. "Your balance is excellent. Much better than most astronauts on their first try." In the control room, Dae-sung watched the screens showing all 4 tourists in their training. Each person had taken to the training in their own way. Young-mi handled everything with calm patience. She treated each challenge like a new skill to master, just as she had done when learning to use a computer last year. Next to her chamber, Tae-ho Yoon spun in his machine. The science teacher had already memorized how the spinning chamber worked and was taking notes in his head for his students. Su Bin Kang was in the 3rd chamber, recording everything with a special camera attached to her training suit. "This is amazing," she called out. "The spinning feels like a dance." But in the 4th chamber, things weren't going as well. Hansol Choi's face had turned slightly green. "Stop the machine," Hansol said weakly. "I need to get out." Jae-won quickly slowed his chamber to a stop. As soon as the door opened, Hansol stumbled out and sat down hard on a nearby chair. "This is impossible," he said, wiping his face with a towel. "Regular people can't handle this. I'm pulling my funding from the program." The room went quiet. Even the other chambers slowed to a stop. Everyone knew Hansol's company had provided much of the money for the project. Dae-sung walked over to Hansol. "The sickness is normal," he said calmly. "Even trained astronauts get it at first. That's why we have the butterfly protocol." Jae-won stepped forward with her tablet. "Watch this," she said, pulling up a video. It showed the inside of the space station, where the butterfly protocol was working. "The system creates a special field that helps prevent space sickness," she explained. "It's like having an invisible helper that keeps your balance right. The training is just to prepare you, but the actual trip will be much easier." Hansol watched the video, still looking doubtful. Then Young-Mei walked over, her training suit slightly wrinkled. "Mr. Choi," she said, sitting next to him. "I'm just a grandmother who worked in a small shop all my life. If I can do this, you can too. Sometimes the best things in life are a little uncomfortable at first." Subin and Taeho joined them. "We're all in this together," Taeho said. "Think about what this means for the future. Years from now, people will read about us in history books." Hansol looked at each of them, then at the spinning chambers, and finally at his own hands. After a long moment, he stood up. "One more try," he said firmly. "But Jae-won, you better be right about that butterfly protocol." Jae-won smiled. "Trust the technology, trust the training, and most importantly, trust yourself." As Hansol walked back to his chamber, Dae-sung felt proud of his team. This was what the program was about: regular people supporting each other, facing challenges together, and proving that space was for everyone. The chamber started spinning again, and this time, Hansol kept his eyes fixed on a point in space, just as Young-Mei had shown him. They had 2 more weeks of training ahead, but now they faced it as a team. The morning sun had not yet risen when Dae-sung arrived at the launch site. The big rocket stood tall against the dark sky, ready for its historic mission. Today was supposed to be perfect. But as soon as he walked into the control room, he knew something was wrong. Jae-won met him at the door, her face serious. "We found something during the final check," she said quietly, leading him to a screen. "Look at the main viewing window of the spacecraft." Dae-sung leaned close to the screen. The special camera showed tiny lines in the window, cracks so small that normal eyes couldn't see them. "How bad is it?" he asked, keeping his voice low so the technicians nearby wouldn't hear. "The cracks are very small," Jae-won said. "The butterfly protocol can adjust the cabin pressure to make sure everything stays safe. But," she paused, looking worried. "But what?" "But we've never tested the system with damaged windows before. It should work, but I can't be completely sure." Outside the control room, they could hear excited voices. News teams from all over the world were setting up their cameras. The 4 tourists would arrive in less than an hour. "If we delay the launch, we lose everything," Dae-sung said. "The media will say space tourism is too dangerous. Hansol's company might pull their funding. The whole program could end. If we launch and something goes wrong, it will be even worse," Jae-won replied. They stood in silence, watching the sun slowly rise over the launch pad. Years of work, dreams, and hopes all came down to this moment. The door opened, and Young-Mei walked in. She wasn't supposed to be there yet, but somehow she had known something was wrong. The grandmother looked at their serious faces and asked, "What's the problem?" After they explained, Young-Mei walked to the window and looked at the rocket. "In my shop," she said, "I broke a glass once. It had small cracks, just like your window. Everyone said I should close the shop and fix it, but it was our busiest day, and many people were counting on us. So I put strong tape over the glass and stayed open. Sometimes you have to trust that things will work out." "This is a bit different from a shop window," Dae-sung said gently. "Is it?" Young-Mi turned to face them. "You have your special butterfly system. I had my tape, Both are ways to make broken things work safely. The question is, do you trust your solution as much as I trusted mine? Jaiwan looked at her computer again. The Butterfly Protocol's safety ratings are far above what we need. Even with the small cracks, we have a big safety margin. Then I trust you, Mai said simply. And I'll tell the others to trust you too. Just then, the other tourists arrived. Hansol was checking his phone. Subin was filming everything. And Taeho was making notes about the rocket's design. Daesung and Jaewon shared a long look. Finally, Daesung nodded. Start the launch preparations, he said. But Jaewon watched those window readings every second. Already on it, Jaewon replied, her fingers moving quickly over her keyboard. The Butterfly Protocol is running extra safety checks. As the tourists put on their spacesuits, May gave Daesung a small smile. Sometimes the biggest problems need the simplest solutions, she said. Trust your work, trust your team, and trust that window. The countdown began, and Daesung watched as his dream either moved toward success or disaster. Everything now depended on Jaewon's invention and Mi's wisdom. The rocket engines roared to life, shaking the ground with their power. Inside the spacecraft, the four tourists sat quietly in their seats, each lost in their own thoughts as the countdown reached its final numbers. 10, 9, 8. The launch controller's voice came through their headsets clearly. Through the supposedly damaged window, they could see the morning sky waiting for them. Mi held tightly to her seat straps, whispering a quiet prayer. Next to her, Hansol had closed his eyes, his knuckles white on the armrests. Taeho kept his eyes fixed on the instruments in front of him, while Subin made sure her camera was recording everything. 3, 2, 1. Launch. The force pushed them back into their seats as the rocket lifted off. The roar became louder, and the ground fell away beneath them. They were really doing it. They were going to space. In the control room, Daesung and Jaewon watched the screens carefully. Every reading from the spacecraft appeared in front of them, especially the ones from the window sensors. Passing through lower atmosphere, Jaewon announced, "Window pressure is holding steady. The Butterfly Protocol is working perfectly." Just then, a warning light started flashing. One of the rocket's smaller steering engines wasn't working properly. In the past, this would have meant stopping the launch right away. But the Butterfly Protocol was already fixing the problem. "Amazing," Daesung said, watching the system work. "It's adjusting the other engines to make up for the problem. The tourists probably don't even notice anything is wrong." Inside the spacecraft, the four passengers felt only a slight shake as the system made its adjustments. Hansol opened his eyes and looked around. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his business sense making him alert to any changes. "Better than okay," Taeho answered, pointing to a screen that showed the Butterfly Protocol working. "The computer is flying the ship better than any human pilot could. This is incredible." The spacecraft rose higher and higher. Soon they could see the curve of the Earth below them. The sky around them grew darker until finally it turned completely black. Stars appeared, brighter than they had ever seen them before. "Look at that," Mai whispered, tears floating away from her eyes in the zero gravity. "Our beautiful Earth." Subin's camera captured everything. The blue curve of Earth below, the black space above, and the faces of her fellow passengers as they saw their home planet from space for the first time. Even Hansol seemed to forget his worries. "All my life," he said quietly, "I've worked to build tall buildings. But now they look so small from up here. Everything looks different." The damaged window held strong, protected by Jaewon's careful programming. The Butterfly Protocol kept working silently, making thousands of small adjustments every second to keep the flight smooth and safe. Back in the control room, Daesung and Jaewon finally allowed themselves to relax a little. The hardest part was over. Their dream of making space travel safe for regular people was coming true right in front of them. They made it, Jai once said, smiling as she watched the tourists' excited faces on her screen. Regular people in space, and they're doing just fine. Better than fine, Dae-sung replied. Look at them. They look like they were born for this. The spacecraft continued its journey toward Morning Calm Station, carrying its precious cargo of dreams and hopes. Today, they had proved that space wasn't just for trained astronauts anymore. Today, they had opened the door to the stars for everyone. Morning Calm Station grew larger in the spacecraft's windows as they approached. The space station looked like a giant silver flower floating in space, its solar panels spread out like petals catching the sun's light. Beginning docking procedures, the pilot announced as the butterfly protocol guided their ship toward the station. The tourists watched in amazement as the two spacecraft moved closer together with perfect precision. There was a gentle bump, then a series of clicking sounds. They had arrived at their new home for the next week. Welcome to Morning Calm Station. Dae-sung's voice came through the speakers. He had arrived earlier to prepare everything for them. Please wait while we check the airlocks. When the doors finally opened, young Mai was the first to float through. She moved with surprising grace, as if she had been waiting all her life for this moment. The training really worked, she said, turning gracefully in the air. It feels just like those spinning chambers, but much easier. Tae-ho followed her, already pulling out the special camera he would use for his science lessons. The butterfly protocol is helping us, he explained. It's creating invisible fields that make moving in zero gravity feel more natural. Soo-bin floated in next, her camera capturing everything. Look at this, everyone, she said to her viewers back on Earth. I'm floating, and I'm not even feeling sick. Her live stream was already breaking viewing records. Han Sol came last, moving cautiously at first, but soon he too was floating comfortably. This is remarkable, he said, looking out the large observation window. I never thought it would feel so normal. Their first meal in space was simple, special space food in sealed containers. But they didn't care about the food. They were too busy watching their drinks float in special balls of water and catching pieces of fruit that drifted away from their plates. Young Mai surprised everyone by taking out her knitting needles, which had been specially approved for space. The world's first space knitting, she announced, as she created a small scarf that floated around her like a colorful snake. Tae-ho set up his science experiments in a corner of the main room. He mixed liquids that formed perfect floating spheres and showed how flames burned in strange ways without gravity. His students on Earth watched everything through a live video feed, sending thousands of excited messages. Soo-bin's posts about life in space went viral instantly. She showed people how to wash their hair without gravity, how to exercise using special space equipment, and how to sleep while floating. Space isn't scary, she told her viewers. It's just different, and different can be wonderful. Even Han Sol found himself enjoying things he hadn't expected. He held several business meetings from space, and his clients were amazed to see him floating during their video calls. This isn't just a tourist trip, he told Dae-sung. This is the future of business. Imagine having our most important meetings up here, looking down at Earth. At night, when the station's lights dimmed to simulate evening on Earth, they gathered in the observation room. They watched satellites drift past, like moving stars, and saw cities on Earth light up as darkness spread across the planet. I never thought I'd see something like this, young Mai said softly, her knitting floating beside her. All my life, space was something distant and impossible. Now look at us, just regular people, living among the stars. Dae-sung watched them from the control room, feeling proud. These tourists weren't just visitors. They were proving that space truly was for everyone. They were showing the world that with the right preparation and technology, any person could reach for the stars. The fifth day on Morning Calm Station started normally. Young Mai was knitting in the observation room, creating a small collection of floating scars. Tae-ho worked on his science experiments while his students watched from Earth. Soo-bin recorded her morning routine for her followers. Han Sol held his daily business meeting, impressing his clients with views of Earth behind him. Then everything changed in an instant. A sharp alarm sounded through the station. Red lights started flashing in every room. Jae-won's voice came through the speakers, calm but serious. "Everyone please move to the central room immediately. We have detected an object approaching the station." The tourists quickly moved to the central room, using the handholds along the walls just as they had practiced in training. Through the windows, they could see something small and bright moving fast through space. "It's a micrometeoroid," Dae-sung explained as he floated into the room. "A very small piece of rock from space. The butterfly protocol detected it early, but it's moving too fast to avoid completely." The tourists watched the screens as the small rock came closer. The butterfly protocol was already working, adjusting the station's shields and preparing for impact. "Will the shields hold?" Han Sol asked, his business experience making him think about risks and solutions. "The shields will help," Jae-won's voice came through again. "But the meteoroid might damage one of our solar panels. We need to prepare for possible power problems." Young-mi looked around at the worried faces. "What can we do to help?" she asked. "We may not be trained astronauts, but we're not helpless." Dae-sung smiled at her words. "Actually, we could use your help. We need to prepare the backup power systems, just in case." They divided into teams. Tae-ho worked with Jae-won through the computer, using his science knowledge to help calculate power needs. Soo-bin used her camera's bright lights to help see into dark corners where backup batteries were stored. Han Sol helped organize their emergency supplies, treating it like managing one of his companies. Young-mi kept everyone calm, sharing stories about times she had handled problems in her shop. The micrometeoroid hit with a sound like a bell ringing. The whole station shook slightly, but the butterfly protocol kept everything stable. Just as Jae-won had predicted, one of the solar panels was damaged. "Main power is down to 60%, Jae-won reported. "Backup systems are running perfectly, thanks to everyone's preparation." They watched through the windows as the damaged solar panel slowly turned away from the sun. The station's lights dimmed slightly as power was redirected to important systems. "Now we have a choice," Dae-sung said. "We can end the mission early and return to Earth, or we can continue with backup power. The butterfly protocol says both options are safe, but I want to hear what you think." The tourists looked at each other. They had faced the crisis together, working as a team. None of them had panicked. They had proved that regular people could handle space emergencies. "I vote we stay," Young-mi said firmly. "We came here to show that space is for everyone. Running away from our first problem wouldn't help prove that." One by one, the others agreed. Even Han Sol nodded, saying, "Good business means facing challenges, not avoiding them." Dae-sung looked proud. "Then it's decided. We'll continue the mission. G1, please start the repair programs." They watched as the station's automatic repair systems began working on the solar panel. The crisis had shown something important. Space might be dangerous, but with the right technology and the right people, any problem could be solved. 3 months after their historic space journey, the 4 tourists gathered at the Goheung Space Center for a special ceremony. The main hall was filled with reporters, business leaders, and future space tourists from around the world. Young-mi sat in the front row, wearing one of the scarves she had made in space. Next to her, Soo-bin checked the views on her space videos. They had reached over 1 billion people worldwide. Tae-ho organized his notes about the science experiments he had done, which were now part of school programs across the country. Han Sol reviewed the final plans for his company's new space tourism division. Dae-sung stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. 3 months ago, we asked a question. Are we ready for commercial space travel? Today, we can answer with certainty. Yes, we are. Behind him, a large screen showed pictures from their journey. The launch, the first arrival at Morning Calm Station, Young-mi's floating scarves, Tae-ho's experiments, Soo-bin's videos, and even the way they handled the micrometeoroid crisis. Our first tourists showed us something important, Jai-1 added, joining Dae-sung at the podium. They proved that space isn't just for trained astronauts. With the right technology and preparation, anyone can reach for the stars. The screen changed to show the next phase of the program. 3 new space stations were being built, each one bigger and more advanced than Morning Com Station. Han Sol's company was funding 2 of them. Today, we have exciting news, Dae-sung announced. The waiting list for space tourism has reached 1 million people. Teachers, doctors, artists, business people. Everyone wants their chance to see Earth from above. Young Miss stood up to speak next. Since returning to Earth, she had become a popular speaker, encouraging older people to chase their dreams. Age doesn't matter in space, she said, smiling. Up there, everyone is equally weightless. Taiho shared how his students' test scores in science had improved dramatically after watching his space experiments. Children need to know that space isn't just science fiction anymore, he said. It's a real place where they can go someday. Soo Bin's latest video series, showing how the Butterfly Protocol made space travel safe, had helped change public opinion. People aren't afraid of space travel anymore, she explained. They see it as an adventure they can actually have. Han Sol made the biggest announcement of the day. My company is investing in a fleet of new spacecraft, he said. When I went to space as a doubter, I came back as a believer. Now I want to help others make the same journey. Jai-1 presented the latest improvements to the Butterfly Protocol. The system that had kept them safe through the micrometeoroid crisis was now even better. Every challenge makes us stronger, she said. Every problem helps us make space travel safer. As the ceremony ended, Dae-sung looked at his first group of tourists with pride. They had done more than just visit space. They had opened a door that would never close again. Young Mead touched the space-made scarf around her neck. So, she asked with a bright smile, when can we go back up? Everyone laughed, but they all felt the same way. Space wasn't just a place they had visited. It had become part of who they were. And now, thanks to their journey, it would become part of many other people's stories too. The age of space tourism had truly begun.